I want to tell you a story about the day anime changed. Or at least the day perceptions of anime changed. The day when anime as a phenomenon was truly defined. The day it burst off the television and into the real world powerfully enough that it could never again be ignored. It was February 22nd, 1981. This was the day a group of young people, 15,000 strong, assembled in Shinjuku to proudly declare anime as their new culture, wrote the Asahi Shimbun in a 2009 remembrance. They were there for the Rally for Declaring a New Anime Era, an event celebrating the release of the first Mobile Suit Gundam film the following month. In the February 6, 1981 evening edition of the Yomiuri Shimbun, an advertisement was placed beneath the TV broadcast listings, boldly declaring February 22nd would be the start of this new anime era, and promising two events, including a public rally in Alta Plaza at Shinjuku Station, where Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tomino would be on hand to make the official proclamation of this new era. Shinjuku Station is, by a comfortable margin, the busiest train station in the world, and back in 1981, 700,000 commuters passed through it every day. Alta Plaza is the area outside the station's east entrance, in front of the Studio Alta TV building, whose large public screen helped make the location a particularly boisterous hub of activity for young people increasingly defining and expressing their own cultural tastes. Staging the new anime era declaration event here was a high-risk, high-reward proposition. On the one hand, there was no better place to get more or higher profile exposure with the teen and young adult audience Gundam targeted. If it went well, the general public would see this declaration as more than mere hype marketing a theatrical cartoon. On the other, it would be hard to find a spot where it would be more disruptive if things got out of hand, as they easily could with enough people in attendance. But then, Mobile Suit Gundam was a show whose entire existence was premised on desperation, dreams, and ambition, a series of big, bold bets about the future of anime as both art and industry. Its studio, Nippon Sunrise, had been formed in 1972 by veterans of Osamu Tezuka's Mushi Production, the studio behind 1963's Mighty Atom, generally regarded as the first notable TV anime, and the one that established, for better and for worse, the business model of making weekly television animation in Japan. Its founders had thus come in on the ground floor of TV anime, and they had witnessed the audience grow up alongside the industry. Those who were children when Mighty Atom premiered were teenagers and young adults by the mid-70s, but for the most part, anime wasn't growing up with them, generally sticking to episodic plots and, in the giant robot genre Sunrise specialized in, outlandish action and simplistic black-and-white characters. The success of Academy Productions' more mature, serialized space battleship Yamato in 1974, and in particular its 1977 compilation film, which outgrossed the original Star Wars in Japan, indicated the center of gravity was shifting, and Sunrise wanted to be one of the players accelerating this transformation. The studio initially kept itself afloat by subcontracting animation for other studios, but in 1977 they made a deal with toy company Clover to produce 3 original giant robot-themed TV anime. Clover would sponsor the series and sell toys based on the robot designs, but Sunrise would be able to create their own stories, characters, and worlds. Yoshiyuki Tomino would direct and principally conceptualize all 3 series, and while the first 2 would generally paint inside the lines of the child-friendly super robot genre, heroic children piloting colorful, superpowered machines, he quickly earned a reputation for pushing against these limits. 1977's Zambot 3 featured a shockingly bleak ending where the majority of the child protagonists die in a final suicide attack, with 12-year-old protagonist Kappei tearfully calling out the names of all his departed friends, and then hallucinating his dead father cradling him as he lies cold and alone on the beach. It earned Tomino a new nickname among fans and industry insiders: Kill 'em all, Tomino. Neither this show nor Sunrise's other efforts outright failed, but they were hardly Yamato-sized hits, and as Tomino's new moniker indicated, there was a growing disconnect between the expected audience of children and the darker, pricklier anime Sunrise was delivering. Sunrise had barely a year left to make original anime, recounted producer Masao Iizuka for Gundam's 40th anniversary in 2019. So the next project we did needed to be something special, or else we would be back to subcontracting. We needed a hit like Yamato that could spawn a feature film, something to make a name for Sunrise. Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, the character designer and lead animator on Mobile Suit Gundam, recalled the planning team meeting in a small apartment, dejectedly asking each other for ideas, until Tomino pulled out 30 full pages of creative plans he had ambitiously crafted on his own. A cartoon depicting the meeting drawn by Yasuhiko shows himself and other members of the staff sitting in a circle, bored and unfocused, except for an exaggerated Tomino, whose devilish grin betrays a mind awash in plans. These original planning documents were a manifesto for what this more could be. It would feature a colorful 20-meter-tall robot war machine as demanded by Clover to market toys, but would in every other way deviate from the sponsor's expectations. It would be a show aimed at teens with an elaborate ongoing story arc, its tale of young people unexpectedly thrust into the role of soldiers in a desperate civil war for control of the Earth sphere, taking inspiration from literary sources like Jules Verne's 2 Years Vacation, and Robert A. Heinlein's Starship Troopers. Both heroes and villains would be nuanced and complicated, and hard science, not fantastical superpowers, would drive the story and world building. Tomino wrote in the planning notes, overall theme, freedom and duty. Dramatic theme, adolescence from a boy's perspective. Visuals, series of intense battles. Core of the story is about teenagers. Journey of survival. Ahead on that road, new world is waiting for them, even if no one can really believe it exists. That last sentence reads as much, if not more, like Tomino making a promise to himself and his colleagues as it does a pitch for a new TV series. Looking back, that was Tomino in his absolute prime, Yasuhiko recalls. It was like he had a divine mission. That sensation comes through in the finished project. Mobile Suit Gundam is a work of such ferocious invention, intelligent storytelling, and overwhelming kineticism that even now, living 40 years later in an anime landscape the series substantially helped shape, it continues to feel profoundly arresting and revolutionary. That divine mission Yasuhiko sensed in Tomino is just as visible in his own work shaping the series' art and animation, and in that of the many animators, voice actors, and musicians who worked to bring it all together, many of whom would go on to be major figures and even household names in their respective fields. But it was also a deeply troubled production, marred by insufficient resources, overworked staff, and constant pressure from the show's sponsors. Ratings were low, and toy sales were disappointing. The series' future constantly rested on the edge of a knife, and the production suffered a particularly extreme blow halfway through when Yasuhiko, who was personally animating as much of the series as he could muster, his prodigious skills making up for what Sunrise lacked in resources, collapsed at the office. He was hospitalized with pleurisy for the remainder of the show's run, which was cut short from a planned 51 episodes to 43 due to its commercial performance. The scramble to finish the series was so intense that staff were more relieved than disheartened to have the run cut short. A central problem was that Clover was creating toys and merchandise aimed at young children, still believing this to be animation's central demographic, while Gundam itself was rather emphatically inappropriate for the single-digit youths who might want such products. But if Gundam wasn't performing well with the audience expected by the industry, it quickly, according to Frederick L. Schote, gained a near fanatical following among a much older audience group than would have been normally expected. Many viewers were junior and senior high school, even college students. This was also the time when anime magazines and fan-centric publications were starting to gain a foothold, with Animech and its 24-year-old editor-in-chief Masanobu Komaki making a name for themselves particularly on the back of promoting and reporting on Mobile Suit Gundam. Meanwhile, the series started seeing commercial success through a deal with toy company Bandai to create plastic model kits based on the various machines featured in the series. These were elaborate models users would build and pose themselves, allowing not just for a high-quality final product accurate to Kunio Okawara's iconic designs, but much more expression and creativity from the fans engaging with them. These models, Gunpla, a portmanteau of Gundam plastic model, explicitly appealed to the teens and adults who were becoming the first major Gundam fans, and while Bandai didn't get their models to market until after Gundam had finished its initial airing, the kits were an immediate success. The series entered nationwide syndication around the time Gunpla first hit the market, and immediately drew bigger ratings than it achieved on first run. A month into syndication, Gundam's feature film potential would be realized when Shochiku greenlit a movie, something Tomino and company were excited to deliver, not just for the exposure, but to create a purer, tighter version of what they'd accomplished on TV, removing elements Tomino had included to appease the sponsors, and giving Yasuhiko the opportunity to personally draw and supervise new and revised animation for the material he had missed while in hospital. To do this, they would need a full trilogy of films, each over 2 hours in length, and Shochiku had only greenlit one. The gathering in Alta Plaza on February 22, 1981, was a major impetus for the studio ultimately ordering that full trilogy 3 weeks before the first movie opened. It was Tadahiko Nobe, a young Shochiku marketing producer, who came up with the idea for a live display of fan enthusiasm as a central pillar of the film's marketing. But one imagines Tomino and company, who had from the beginning of their Gundam journey worked like they had something to prove, weren't inclined to turn down such a flashy, attention-grabbing gesture. Signs of a formidable fan contingent coalescing in Shinjuku were apparent on the eve of the event. Tomino flew in from Osaka at 9 o'clock the night before, and when he landed in Tokyo, members of Shochiku's publicity team informed him 300 fans were already camping out in anticipation. By morning, that number had swelled to 2,000. Their dedication is extra impressive when one considers this was a chilly day in February. Temperatures were just above freezing throughout the evening of the 21st and morning of the 22nd, rising only to 43 degrees Fahrenheit during the afternoon rally. "I get it now," a member of Tomino's entourage reportedly said when they heard about the fans already lined up the night before. "Fans are amazing." A smaller lottery invite morning event went smoothly, but as the afternoon rally approached, things got dramatic. The crowd was growing uncomfortably large. Tomino estimated its size pushed 15,000 by midday, and with people starting to push and shove to get a good spot, the specter of a riot, or at least uncomfortable police attention, was now possible. The shadow of the Anpo protests of 1959 to 60 and 1970 still lingered. These demonstrations against renewals of the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty had ballooned to hundreds of thousands at their height, and in 1960 climaxed with a deadly struggle between police and protesters in the National Diet compound. If things got even slightly out of hand in Alta Square, it might forever taint anime and its fandom. For an event held to declare a new anime era, the stakes could not be higher. Tomino took the stage before the event was set to begin in an effort to cool passions. "If anyone gets hurt here, society is going to crack down on anime and anime fans, so don't let that happen," one fan remembered him saying. Recollections and retellings differ as to how commanding Tomino was, whether the crowd was enraptured, or whether the moment was more awkward and halting, but orderliness was in any case restored. The event certainly didn't turn into a riot. But when the declaration statement was to be made at the day's climax, Tomino stood down from reciting it himself. His earlier intervention had underlined to him that, at 40 years of age, he already belonged to a different generation. The declaration was instead read by two students who had come dressed as the series' dastardly antagonist, Char Aznable, and Lala Soon, the mysterious tragic esper caught between Char and protagonist Amuro Ray. The young man was Mamoru Nagano, then 21, who later collaborated with Tomino on mechanical designs for Gundam's sequel series, and in 1986 began serializing the seminal manga The Five-Star Stories, which later received its own anime adaptation by Sunrise. His companion, Maria Kawamura, was 19 and would become a prolific voice actor with roles in many of Tomino's future productions, including multiple Gundam sequels, and gained her greatest notoriety as fan favorite and spectacularly named supporting character Young Freud in the 1988 OVA Gunbuster, Aim for the Top, the breakthrough anime of director Hideaki Anno, who later named his most enduring work Shinseki Evangelion, Neon Genesis Evangelion in English, after the declaration Kawamura and Nagano were reading, the word Shinseki also used here as New Era. 10 years after the Shinjuku Declaration in 1991, Nagano and Kawamura were married. The official matchmakers were Yoshiyuki Tomino and his wife. This isn't all just trivia. That so many intersections of anime history can easily be traced to this declaration only lends credence to its mythical status. Tadahiko Nobe, the Shochiku marketing producer, had written the words himself, but he successfully captured the flavor of the series' writing, and more importantly, the spirit of Tomino and Company's dogged drive to change the industry through their art. It may have started as a promotional effort, but the undeniable force of the crowd standing before them meant that the words Nagano and Kawamura were to read carried a weight far greater than that of a commercial. The words went as follows. We, for the first time, have an anime for our generation. Mobile Suit Gundam transcends the bounds of the creator and the audience. It is a new type of anime. Mobile Suit Gundam appeals to a tangible depiction of the future where the human and the mechanical are fused. However, within that unfair, bleak world of war, the characters simply live as they worry and suffer together. Through so vast a distance, love or truth could not be seen. Even so, they soon arrived at the faint hope of the new type. But for us, in our reality, we can't even catch that glimmer, because the new type of Amuro belongs to Amuro alone. This is a drama about questioning what it means to live. If we are to accept this question, we have no choice but to, with a deep hope and determination, seek out our own spiritual world, our new type. Now, let us face the future and vow together. We, with our generation whose path forward has been opened by anime, declare the dawn of a new anime era. The whole square listened in silence as if the words unified us all, remembered one fan. Animec editor Masanobu Komaki said in 2009 that he heard from many fans that they felt like they witnessed history. The first draft of that history was published the next day in Yomiuri Shimbun, sandwiched between a story about an election recall on the island of Niijima and a humorous cartoon map of Shinjuku's Wakaba district. The headline declared 10,000 people for anime promotion. The text of the story ran beneath a large picture of the teeming crowd in Alta Plaza, the sea of individuals all blending together in a high-contrast blur of black and white newsprint. With the New Era Declaration, anime, which was thought of as something childish, became recognized as one part of youth culture, says Komaki. At a time when there wasn't folk music and political activism anymore, anime became something that young people had in common. The Animec editor is here referring to the counterculture and protest movements, usually led by young people and college students, of Japan's turbulent 60s. The New Era Declaration symbolically represented the shift from an era of politics to an era of hobbies. Anime critic Ryota Fujitsu told the Asahi Shimbun in 2009. It is a provocative thought that the political organizing students and young people defined their identity through in the 1960s gave way in the 70s and early 80s to hobbies like anime as social and personal organizing principles. Tomino himself had a simpler memorialization. Was it good publicity? He wrote years later. No kidding. Sometimes, in order to let society know that a new cultural phenomenon is emerging, there's no choice but to do things the hard way. The Shinjuku Declaration Rally was, at its core, a promotional event, engineered to generate hype for a film on the cusp of its release, and it would be dishonest to present this as a major political event or a spontaneous cultural inflection point, without being clear-eyed about the commercial objectives at play. And yet, I continually find myself entranced by the words of the Shinjuku Declaration, written as I know they were to create a certain resonance of hype in the heart of a Gundam fan like myself. Even so, there is an indelible truth to them, a truth about the role of Gundam in particular and anime in general in my own life, in the lives of people I know, in the ripples of and through culture Gundam left and anime continues to leave. The Declaration eloquently taps into still relevant ideas, like the relationship between viewers and creators, into themes that so often resonate in anime about living within ambiguous times and spaces, and trying to find paths forward through the simple act of living, to the acknowledgement of anime as a space where dreams and ambitions frustrated by reality can be actualized, considered, and played with in ways that then enrich the viewer's real life, to the notion that anime has opened doors towards a future, one rife with possibility that extends beyond the boundaries of the screen. We are undeniably living in a new anime era, and if it was mostly confined to the shores of Japan in 1981, it has now gone global. Decades later, in the age of digital technology and internet communication, this new anime era continues to evolve both art and fandom in ways that make each newer and more singular than ever before. Anime is symbolic, Tomino said to the Asahi Shimbun in 2009. Because of that symbolic nature, I feel it has the power to transcend national and cultural boundaries. I've learned that even a massive issue like the future of humanity is easier to understand if it's placed in fiction and discussed. I believe that anime creators should be aware of this and take the problems we must consider now, like how can humanity continue to survive on an Earth that is limited, and bring attention to that issue through anime. It's been 30 years since the New Era Declaration, and anime is finally being recognized by the general media. From now, a true new era will begin. These 30 years were simply us approaching the starting line.